We are 1 week away from the fantasy playoffs, and if you were tuning into this episode of the Regression to the Mean podcast, odds are you are in a win or go home matchup, or maybe you're close to securing a bye. Regardless, we appreciate you for joining us on this 2023 fantasy football journey, and we're here today to give you the best possible advice to help you win in Week 14. On today's episode, we have our top 40 running backs for Week 14. I am your host, Shaun Moran, and I am joined by Keegan Thompson and Aidan Holler, my good friends and my co-hosts. Keegan, brand new camera, new guy. Who am I talking about? How you doing, dude?
Yes, we're debuting the new camera for the podcast today. It looks a little different from my point of view for the YouTube viewers that are watching this. I'm excited. I feel like I look a little bit more crystal clear.
Ooh.
You can see all the imperfections in my mustache. And yeah, I feel like this will definitely boost my ability to give some heinous fantasy football takes. So
Keegan is texted us several times that he's retiring from fantasy football. So that's where Keegan's at right now. Aidan, how you doing today, man?
I'm good. No new camera for me. Jeff Bezos is holding mine hostage. It's been on hold for about 7 days. So one of these days I'll look as good as Keegan. But for now, I'm just here to talk rankings, and I'm fired up for fantasy playoffs. So that's my vibe.
I am juiced as well. If you are new to our rankings show, first off, welcome. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And secondly, our ranking shows consist of my rankings where I have ranked the top 40 options at running back, and I've broken them into 7 tiers. I'm going to go through each tier with all of you, and Keegan and Aidan are going to give their thoughts on each tier. For your own reference, each tier is time-stamped, and the rankings are in the description of this video below. So if you're looking at this on your phone, maybe you can't see all the data. It's a little overwhelming with the spreadsheet we're going to throw up on YouTube. Don't worry, you can reference those rankings in the notes in the description of this episode. And it's timestamped. So if you just want to jump to fringe RB3, RB4 types that you're looking to stream this week, go ahead, take advantage of those timestamps. So again, guys, if you are watching this on YouTube, I want to call out a couple of things. I'm going to pull up the rankings. When you're looking at these rankings in real time, on the very left, you're going to see the actual rank of where I have these guys ranked. And from the right on, you're going to see opposing defensive rank versus running backs and wide receivers. Opposing defense, RB point per game average. We're going to see expected fantasy point per game rank and fantasy point per game rank. All of this then is turned into a regression score where I have essentially taken these factors in and I formulated whether or not they are a positive or negative regression candidate. Guys, any questions on the rankings here? Does this all read well?
I think that's loud and clear for the viewers.
And on the very far right, you will find my notes here. But again, if you want to reference this in real time while you're building out your lineups, the link is available in the description of this video. All right, boys, starting with tier 1, I've got Christian McCaffrey, Kyren Williams, and Alvin Kamara. So Christian McCaffrey is the king of running backs, and he gets a top 5 matchup this week against the Seattle Seahawks. The 49ers are 10.5-point home favorites. You guys see circulating stuff about CMC this week where it was like the top 5 running backs ranked, and McCaffrey was at 270. The next guy's at like 200, and the RB5's at like 160. CMC's clearing the RB5 by 100 points. So no joke, he's legit king of running backs. Calling out Elton this tier, and I think we don't have to spend too much time. I'm going to continue having Kyren Williams in the same tier as Christian McCaffrey moving forward. He is the second best role in all of fantasy football. This is a difficult matchup against Baltimore, but we have seen running backs get home against Baltimore. Looking at you, Jahmyr Gibbs. It isn't impossible. So I'm all in on Kyren Williams, and I will be in on Kyren Williams for the rest of the season. So I'll pause here with this tier. Probably not a ton of notes. Curious to know your guys' thoughts. Maybe someone has a thought on Alvin Kamara.
No notes. Shaun, for the viewers of the rankings or people that are watching this video, is your expected fantasy points per game also from just the last month?
Yes. So I have the last 4 weeks of expected fantasy points per game and points per game. I like to use the last 4 weeks. I think it captures a lot of direction of where things are headed. because if you look at fantasy usage from the first 4 weeks of the season, it's going to look very different than where we're at now. So expected fantasy points per game and points per game. And by expected fantasy points per game, I'm going to refer to that as usage for the rest of the video. So by usage, that's expected fantasy points per game rank. And that's over the last 4 weeks.
Good things to clarify as we get it.
God, this guy's
There we
good.
go.
This guy's good.
He's good.
He's good.
He's good.
He's so good.
I'll give him that.
He's really good. Aidan, any thoughts on this tier before we jump to the next tier?
Yeah, I just wanted to, this is just nitpicky, just as like a forewarning. The weather's looking pretty awful for the Baltimore game this week. Like 85% chance of rain, 20 mile an hour winds. So I don't think passing is going to be kind of a viable option for really either team, which could kind of put a damper on his ceiling, as we could be looking at 8-man boxes kind of all night over there in Baltimore. But like you said, the usage is elite. But if it's a slugfest out in there in Baltimore, like don't be surprised if he ends up closer to running back 12 or something, just due to the absolute stack boxes all night.
Good point, Aidan. I think he's just going to get 25 touches. So I'm just going to lean on Kyren and that workload there. The next tier of guys that I have here, I've got Bijan Robinson, RB4, Austin Eckler, RB5, Isiah Pacheco, RB6, Rachaad White, RB7, and Devon Achane, RB8. I'd say the big risers in this tier, I've got Bijan 3 spots ahead of Fantasy Pros expert consensus rankings. The usage is finally there and the production's finally there over the last month. He's getting like 20 plus touches per game. Tampa's kind of a tough matchup, but give me Bijan all day, every day. Little down on Austin Eckler. I don't know if I'm buying the Joshua Kelly will get more touches report that just came from Brandon Staley, how he said competition's a good thing. Joshua Kelly is terrible. Ask Keegan's fab budget. So I still think Austin Eckler is going to be good. Sorry, strays. But I'm not going to put Austin Eckler in my top 3 till he has a top 5 performance. He hasn't cracked 10 points in back-to-back weeks. So let's settle down. I get that it's Eckler, but let's see him do it before we get super excited about it. And then I've got Devon Achane, 5 spots ahead of expert consensus rankings. Kind of tough matchup against Tennessee. I just think this game's going to be a blowout, and Devon plays a lot more in blowouts. So I'm expecting a big game from Achane. Thoughts on this tier, guys?
Yeah, I'll just quick notes on Bijan. I just wanted to highlight, Shaun, you already mentioned it, but 19 plus touches in his last 3 straight games. And he only hit that twice in his first 9 games. So obviously the usage is trending up. And the Jets defense is still stout, even against the run game, but he still put up 18 for 53 and then 3 for 36 in the receiving game. Tampa Bay's allowed 21 plus fantasy points and 78 plus rushing yards to Chuba Hubbard, Jonathan Taylor, and CMC in 3 straight games. I feel like that's a really good range of running back skill and talent level to evaluate like just how good of a matchup it is. Also on the weekend, PFF has Atlanta's offensive line. They do their offensive line and defensive line matchup rankings for anybody who's curious what I'm talking about. Good tool to check out when you're like trying to go between, start sit decisions. But they have Atlanta's ranks the number 1 offensive line matchup on the weekend. So I expect a pretty good week for Bijan coming into this. I'm happy to see him kind of in this like top 10 ranking here, as I feel like he should on most sites, but I like the aggressiveness on that.
Yeah, just to piggyback up Bijan, I think Arthur Smith owes us for whatever that like rogue migraine report was last time they paid Tampa. So like I think he just owes us like
good revenge game narrative. Yeah, it's the
I'll wipe the slate
revenge
clean
game
after the unreported migraine game. So yeah, lock in Bijan top 5 this week.
We're 10 minutes into this episode, and we want to take a second here to thank you for supporting the Regression to the Mean podcast. We appreciate you for listening and being a part of the Mean team. If you are part of the 70% of people watching this video that are not subscribed to our channel, we would love it if you go ahead, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and drop any of the questions that you may have in the comments below. We have a goal of 1,000 subscribers before the end of the season. We're about at 700. Every subscriber counts. We appreciate it. All right, back into the rankings. The next tier of guys that I have here from running back 9 to 12. I've got running back 9, Travis Etienne. Running back 10, Tony Pollard. Running back 11, Saquon Barkley. Running back 12, Joe Mixon. Travis Etienne continues to be a positive regression candidate. He got in the end zone. Cleveland is a bit of a tough matchup on paper, but teams have been able to run on them lately. Trevor Lawrence might play, so I I don't know, sickos.
I don't know how that's possible.
I mean, Patrick Mahomes played on a high ankle sprain in the playoffs last year. Lawrence, remember, he got hurt last year and then played like immediately afterwards when he shouldn't have played. So I don't know. I think Lawrence probably is going to try and play. Notes on Tony Pollard here. So Pollard over the last month, guys, RB10 usage, RB11 production. Round of applause.
Beautiful.
We are at parity with production and usage. So what's our congratulations as Tony Pollard truthers? A matchup against the best run defense in the NFL. So enjoy it. Hope you're hungry. I'm still high on Pollard this week. CMC had a great game against the Eagles last week. Must-win game for Dallas. I'm pretty in on a lot of Dallas guys this week. No bias. And the running back 12 here, 4 spots ahead of expert consensus rankings, is Joe Mixon, a guy that I've been critical of for the past 6 months. It's kind of a bummer we're at the point in the year where Joe Mixon is an easy top 12 play versus an Indy rush defense that has gotten torn up, but that's just the truth. He's actually had the 13th best usage and the 6th best production. So he's been hyper efficient with his touches. I don't think I've seen Joe Mixon ever be a negative regression.
That's like the
candidate
exact opposite
of what you expect, right?
Yeah.
I know. So, got to give a tip the cap. If Jake Browning, I don't think he's going to be as good as he was against the Jaguars. Every night, every game he goes
Never
out there. But Aidan and I were on this. This offense is not Jover. Okay, it's fine. Mixon has a good matchup.
They're all dead.
Yeah,
they're all dead.
We need a Keegan. You need a Keegan. You need someone to say everyone's dead every once in a while. I will say with Mixon, though, Grover Stewart returns to the lineup for Indy. He got suspended for PEDs. Elite run stopper. Grover Stewart. So watch out.
Elite name, too.
Grover. Okay, guys. Any thoughts on this tier before we jump to the next?
I want to highlight Mixon, actually. I think the most promising thing that we saw on Monday with Joe Mixon was the checkdowns from Jake Browning. He saw a season high in both targets and catches, led to almost, had 7 targets, 6 catches, almost 50 yards through the air, over 100 total scrimmage yards, and RB1 on the week. Like you mentioned, this is a pretty easy matchup, whether Grover returns or not. I think this offense is going to be competent. I think Jake Browning belongs in the NFL. He played a great game. He probably won't light it up for whatever it was, 400 yards. But Jake Browning can operate this offense. He's got some really nice weapons, and Joe Mixon continues to be pretty much just like a vacuum for all running back touches. I know Chase Brown had a couple touches too. He actually looked kind of nice. But no, I actually really like Joe Mixon this week. I think he is just kind of just underrated again and just keeps on producing. So way to go, Joe Mixon. We're proud of you.
So you're saying it's not going to be Grover for Joe Mixon this week?
Oh,
Grover.
Not Grover. I don't. You guys are laughing at Grover. Dude's a monster in the run game. I know you're laughing at me, looking at me funny, but I'll tell you what. I think Chase Brown, and I'm going to be like my Colin Coward. Is Chase Brown better for Joe Mixon? I think it might actually be better for him to have somebody come in and spell him a little bit. He looked a little fresher.
For sure.
Today's episode of the Regression to the Mean podcast is brought to you by Chalkboard Fantasy Sports. You can win up to 100x your money on Chalkboard by simply choosing more or less on the projected stat lines of your favorite NFL players. But what makes Chalkboard unique is the fact that you can take alternate lines on Chalkboard. This is the thing we love. For example, this Thursday night, got to have a stinky matchup here between the Steelers and the Patriots. Mitch Trubisky's going to play. When Mitch Trubisky plays, he targets Deontay Johnson. You feel pretty good about Deontay Johnson having a good amount of receiving yardage, but because of the low-scoring nature of this game, because the Patriots have a good defense, you're a little sketched out by 49.5 as Deontay Johnson's line for receiving yards. Well, on Chalkboard, you can take that down to 39.5, and then you can pair that with Ezekiel Elliott over 2.5 receptions. And if you put down $20, you can almost triple your money up to $55. You can sign up for the Chalkboard app in the link in the description of this video, and you can use promo code RTM to double your initial deposit up to $100. Promo code RTM, double your deposit up to $100. All right, let's get back into the rankings. Moving on to the next tier here, and this is a tier where I'm kind of making a stand against expert consensus rankings because the glazing needs to stop. I feel like I'm at a Krispy Kreme with the Zack Moss glazing, okay? Zack Moss is great. He's been a great story this season, but the fact that expert consensus rankings at the time of recording this, which is Wednesday night, they had him at RB4 on the week. I can't get there. I cannot get here as an RB4 with Zack Moss. I have him currently as the running back 13. RB13 Zack Moss, RB14 Jahmyr Gibbs, RB15 David Montgomery, RB16 Raheem Mostert, RB17 James Cook, and RB18 Josh Jacobs. So again, Zack Moss, very beatable matchup against Cincinnati. His usage is elite, but his efficiency's been trending downward, and I just can't get there as him being a top 5 play. Curious to know your guys' thoughts on Moss, because there's been a lot of juice from a lot of people in the industry on him.
I like him closer to 10 as well.
Yeah.
He's going to get a ton of usage, but yeah, like there were certain rankings that had him like top 2 last week against a pretty tough, Tennessee run defense. I think we got a little carried away there. He obviously toasted them earlier in the year. And again, like his role is going to be great this week. It's going to be great the remainder of the year until JT returns, but I think putting him around, RB 8 to 15, somewhere snug in that zone, is a bit more comfortable for me.
Yeah, I don't think, I think having him around this range is fine. I don't know if you need to be aggressive. If I'm thinking about like elite running backs, a better opportunity to like smash this week. I don't consider Zack Moss in the range of, Kamara, Bijan, Pacheco, Rachaad, even Travis Etienne, Tony Pollard. Like, I just don't see how I could rank him above that. But he does get a really good matchup this week against Cincinnati, So, I mean, maybe we see him float around the top 5, but he would kind of have to like be super efficient and hit home. But they are allowing, at least it's about 16 fantasy points per game the last 7 games to an individual running back. So not a bad spot for Zack Moss, but don't feel the need to be super aggressive with them either.
And outside of Moss in this tier, I'm just at the point now where Gibbs and Monty, I'll probably rank them back to back. It's really hard to get a read on how the usage is going to play out outside of the fact that Monty's going to get the goal line carries. Mostert outtouched Achane when the game was still within 3 scores. He remains the 1A. I just think this is going to be a blowout, and Achane's going to get a ton of looks. James Cook is currently 11th in the league in scrimmage yards, guys. Out of all players,
I saw that today on Twitter, and it kind of blew me away.
11th. Just let's score some more TDs. He's actually been the RB 10 in PPR over the past month. So usage trending up there. And then I'm low on Josh Jacobs this week. I've got him 12 spots down, expert consensus rankings. He's had a great year, but this isn't a good matchup. Minnesota's been really good at stopping the run all year. So I'm a little down on Jacobs this week. Any other thoughts on this tier before we jump to the next group of guys?
Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about the David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs thing. It's going to be really interesting to see how this game plays out. I mean, their Lions are 3.5-point road favorites right now against the Bears, but it's going to be pretty shitty weather. It should be, at least at the very least, very cold with some slight downpour. I don't know if it'll be a full snow game, but it'll be interesting to see how the usage breaks down between Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery, just based off whether it's a trailing or kind of like winning game script, right? So Gibbs has really benefited when they're trailing in game scripts. And I think the Bears are kind of like heating up a little bit right now. And it's going to be a much more competitive game than I think what most people will like to assume. So will Gibbs get the best workload, or will Montgomery? I'm not sure. But like last week with a positive game script, David Montgomery basically paced him in everything. Carries 18-8, touchdowns 1-0, scrimmage yards pretty close, 55-54, and then snap share, Montgomery with 62% and Gibbs with 45%. It's pretty hard to predict who will be kind of the go-to guy. It all depends on game script. So that's one thing I'll be paying attention to this week. But having them ranked right next to each other feels like the safest bet that you can have.
Yeah, I agree. It's in God's hands now.
And the other thing too, exactly. And the other thing is like the Bears are giving up the 3rd most receptions per game, about 6.1, and most receiving yards per game at 59.4 to running backs. So good for Gibbs, right? Yeah. But if they do go out there and but handle the Bears, so let's say they're winning most of the game, it's good for Monty. It's just going to be interesting to see how it boils down. I do think it's a good spot for both of them.
Yeah, game script's going to be big there. I want to touch on James Cook real fast. I actually really like him again this week. I think since Joe Brady took over as offensive coordinator, we realized what we had in James Cook. Coming off of back-to-back games with 20 touches for the first time all season, going into their bye, I think he's going to continue to be heavily involved. The lack of touchdowns continues to knock him, but when you're catching 5+ balls, it kind of makes up for it. That's a touchdown in itself right there when he's doing that. So we'd love to see more touchdowns, but the overall scrimmage yards and touches he's getting right now in this new scheme is super encouraging. So I like that one. I think that's going to be a super high-scoring affair.
Moving on to the next tier of guys, running backs 19 through 24. RB19, Javonte Williams. RB20, Jaylen Warren. 21, Alexander Mattison. 22, Jerome Ford. 23, Derrick Henry. 24, Breece Hall. Notes, Warren has a nice matchup if Najee misses this week. Najee hasn't practiced both days on a short week with a knee injury. I'd be shocked if Najee misses. Kind of just seems like he'll play. I don't have a good read on that. If Najee doesn't play, Warren probably is a fringe RB1, right? I mean, he's going to vault up, in my opinion. And Alexander Mattison, I've got him a 4 spots ahead of expert consensus rankings. It's a great matchup. This is a great matchup versus a run funnel Raiders defense. He continues to dominate the backfield, no matter how much it makes sense to move away from him. And Breece Hall, positive regression candidate against a middle of the pack rush defense. I just think his offensive line is so, it's just in shambles. I think Zach coming back is good for him, though. I think it's good for everyone in the offense. So I'll pause in this tier. Thoughts?
Tough week for Breece.
Yeah.
Having him as like a fringe RB2, he's probably closer, I think, to me, like RB3 this week. It is better if Zach plays, but their offensive line is still going through plenty of woes. But the Texans are kind of like heating up. The defense has been pretty good, but they're only giving up 3.4 yards per carry to running backs and the third fewest adjusted yards before contact per attempt, which does not bode well for an offensive line that can't keep people out of their backfield. Javonte Williams, in their matchup last week, 13 rushes, 46 yards, 3 catches, 24 receiving, like for a very pedestrian stat line. And that's a team that's a bit better coached and run right now than than Breece Hall's Jets. So I'm pretty nervous about his matchup this week. I do like I like Jaylen. If Najee doesn't play, I still think New England's a pretty good or tough matchup, though. I mean, they kind of stuffed out the Chargers run game last week. So Trubisky under center, that one's interesting. I like where you have Alexander Mattison here, though. I like that.
Aidan doesn't. Aidan doesn't.
I'm so out on him. The only guy that I really wanted to comment on was Derrick Henry. Don't love the matchup this week.
No.
I think they could just kind of get boat raced, which doesn't really bode well for him getting like a ton of carries. But like he's always a threat to fall in the end zone. He's been top 10 2 weeks in a row. So like he probably belongs here, but I think like the matchup is awful. Like Zack Moss didn't do anything last week, and Derrick Henry, even at age 30 or whatever he is at these days, is still a much better running back. So
I can't believe he's going to play. Like
He's
there
the
hasn't even been
king.
word about concussion protocol.
his body looked like limp on the field. I was like, he's for sure
He
out.
got
Tajay boom.
smacked. Like I've never seen the
Yeah.
King get hit like that. They hit him like I think it was 2 guys. He got high load and he just got
Yeah,
rocked.
yeah. His head hit the ground and he like kind of like almost like seized up, for lack of better words. It was like body went limp. So
I just have
glad
to,
he's doing all right.
I have to imagine he gets at least a small dip in production. Also, his splits when they lose versus when they win are ridiculous, and I think they're going to get boat raced. I agree with you, Aidan.
I think it's going to get ugly.
I'm projecting.
It's going to
that,
get ugly.
yeah.
Yep.
Moving on to the next tier, guys. Running backs 25 through 30. I've got running back AJ Dillon, aka AJ Villain, here at RB25. DeAndre Swift at 26. Chuba Hubbard at 27. Gus Edwards 28. Keaton Mitchell 29. Zeke Elliott at RB30. I guess I got notes on all these guys. When the calendar flips to December, you can count on AJ Villain, DeAndre Swift, usage and production in major decline. And I don't know what to do with these Baltimore running backs. Your guess is as good as mine.
No idea.
I have no idea what to do here. Keegan, do you have thoughts on the Baltimore backfield?
Yeah, I have some notes that basically the same thing you're saying. Like I'm pretty interested to see who comes out of the backfield. But if you go back to before the bye, I mean, Keaton Mitchell led the Ravens in snap share, 46%, carries 9, which is not a lot, receptions 2, and scrimmage yards and 89. So he was kind of the lead back going into the bye. I'm curious if they'll take a look at that and be like, okay, Gus's touchdown luck has kind of run its course. Like, let's stick with the kind of explosive back here in Keaton Mitchell. But he's seen between 9 and 11 touches in 3 of his last 4 games. And he's reached double-digit fantasy points in each of those contests. You know, it's not a perfect matchup for him, but I would just like, if I'm going to go with a player between the two of them, like give me the explosive guy who can give good big plays. I mean, the Rams held Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford to 21 attempts and 67 rushing last week. So, like I said, not great, but give me the explosive guy. I'll just move Keaton up one spot. But I do like the trend that he's going in with usage like headed into the bye. So I actually stashed Keaton Mitchell in a league just in case. You never know.
There you go.
Love it. Are you starting him this week? I've got an opportunity to start him this week, and I don't know if I have the cojones to do it. I kind of want
I don't know if I do. I'd like to see it play out for sure.
I kind of want
It depends what your postseason status is.
It's to get in. It's to get in, but I might be a little playing Tommy DeVito and Gardner Minshew in Superflex because Sam Howell's on a bye. So I might need to kind of swing for the fences. So
yeah, you might need to go big here.
I don't know. Aidan, thoughts on this tier before we jump to the next group, guys?
Yeah, there was one guy I just wanted to highlight. AJ Dillon's in the perfect spot.
Yeah.
If you had to guess outside over the last 7 games, how many times do you think AJ Dillon's finished outside of RB 22 to 25?
None. Has he been in that range the whole year?
2 times.
Yeah, it's
2
perfect.
times. And the other ones were like 2 slots out of it. It's like, you know exactly what you're signing up for every week with AJ Dillon. It's like low end RB2 numbers, take 10 points and like it. So yeah, no, AJ Dillon's going to be the exact same thing every single week.
That's where I've got Zeke too, because Zeke, I have Zeke as
the worst.
I just said think AJ Dillon, but in a worst offense. That's what I have for a Zeke.
Yeah.
Worst offense in football, AJ Dillon. So that's.
Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about Zeke real quick before we go to the next one. Hear me out. It's a pretty good week to have Zeke Elliott on your fantasy team. James Conner just toasted the Steelers. Like toasted. James Conner did.
Yeah.
Is that an anomaly though? Like I don't know.
I don't know. Like they're a little bit banged up, but I mean,
like Kyler's a threat though. Like the Patriots don't have a threat.
I hear you, but how many running backs could you have picked up off the waiver this week that would have just came off a 17 carry showing that went for 52 yards on the ground, 4 catches, and 40 yards through the air on 5 targets? You know, like he played 70% of snaps. He had a 20% target share.
It's AJ Dillon. It's literally AJ Dillon in the worst offense in football.
Dude, Steelers are giving up 101 yards rushing per game. And yeah, James Conner went for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. There are worse plays. I'll just say that.
I probably should move him ahead of. I can't get him ahead of Chuba. Chuba looked awesome. Chubard looked great. Chubard, 18 points per game. I mean, Chubard is 18th in fantasy points per game over the last 4 weeks with the 23rd usage. This guy's a negative regression candidate. I would not have expected him to be super efficient. Moving on to the next tier here, running backs 31 through 35. Najee Harris, Devin Singletary, Dameon Pierce, Kareem Hunt, Tyjae Spears. Callouts in this tier: Najee Harris, will he play? And Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce took back control of this backfield. I don't know if you guys noticed this. And the backfield became a 3-headed monster. So they brought in Ogunbowale on pass catching situations, and Dameon Pierce got the goal. The kicker, correct. And Dameon Pierce got the goal line work, and he out-touched Singletary like 15-8. So, and Devin Singletary out-snapped all of them. So it seems like a nightmare. I don't know what to do with that. So I'm just putting them next to each other. Juicy matchup this week, though. So if you have the stones to play either one of them, good matchup against the Jets rush defense. Any thoughts on this tier before we get to the Seahawks Bears tier that I have at the very end?
I
No,
think
this
for
is-
Pierce and Singletary, it's like it's kind of. I should be careful the way I say this. It is a very similar, but not at all the same situation as Gibbs and Montgomery, and it'll depend on game script. They're 5.5 point favorites against the Jets right now. I feel like positive game script would favor Pierce. And you're right, Shaun. I mean, he led him in carries 15-8. He outpaced his scrimmage yards by 1 yard. It's not like they were going crazy in their differences. Pierce gets the touchdown, obviously, but Jets are giving up 7th most rushing yards per game at 105 and the 8th most receptions per game to running backs at 5.3 a game. So I'd probably go Pierce over Singletary this week.
Oh God, dude.
Gibbs and Monty are the Coors Light, and Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce are like the Kirkland Light. Is that what you're saying here? It's like a Kirkland Light versus Coors Light.
Worse than that, dude. It's a it's a 7-Eleven 40, bro.
Oh, it's a Steely? Is it a Steel reserve of running backs?
Dameon Pierce like consistently averages like sub 3 yards a carry. It is so hard to watch this dude play football. Like I looked at his game log because he got in, and I was like, he had a good game, I think, and it was 15 carries, 41 yards, and a touchdown. Like it was an ugly 41 yards, but he made it.
Did you guys see D'Amico Ryan celebrate the touchdown? It was like a make a wish. He was juiced. He was like, yeah.
He was so happy.
And then Tank Dell's leg broke.
I will never forget Bobby Slowick for that. I will
that.
Never forgive him for that.
Straight to jail. Moving on to the next tier here, running backs 36 through 40. I'm literally not joking. It is the Bears Seahawks tier. I've got Roschon Johnson, Khalil Herbert, Donta Foreman. Then I've got Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. No idea if Sharp or Walker are going to play, so this might be a DJ Dallas spot. Please don't play DJ Dallas. And then the Bears running backs, I have no clue what's going to happen here. Foreman's probably the starter, if I had to guess. And Johnson.
I have no idea. There's been like no reports of like how it's going to lean. Like it makes sense to play Roschon, the rookie, but like at this point, like the coaches are still coaching for their job. So like I have no idea if anyone figures his backfield out this week. Let me know.
The only news I heard about them is that today in practice, Deontay Foreman was taking handoffs from Justin Fields, and Khalil Herbert was taking handoffs from Tyson Bagnet. So
Bagnet?
That's good intel.
Bagent? What is it? Bagent.
It's Bagent. How dare you forget T-Bag?
Say his name, damn it.
Say his name.
I mean, Herbert got benched last week before the bye. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He was
Roschon's probably the one I'm rolling out. If I had to throw a dart and start only one of these guys, I'm starting Roschon. He's the best third down back. He's probably going to catch a couple balls, especially if they're trailing.
Yeah.
So Roschon's probably my pick. Probably Foreman next, then Herbert, which is crazy that we're here at this point. I thought Cleo was kind of the surefire starter in week 1.
But that's it for week 14 running backs. Please don't start anyone in the Bears Seahawks tier unless they're healthy, unless the Seahawks guys, one of them's healthy. But that's it for running backs. If you have any start sit questions, drop them in the comments below. If you want the rankings, they're in the descriptions of this video. If you're looking for more content, wide receivers, week 14 is on the feed. You know what to do, people. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Until next time.